Our next speaker is Kim Kuypers. She will be speaking on the neurobiology underlying the physiological effects of MDMA. Kim Kuypers, PhD, has conducted research studying the effects of MDMA on cognitive, psychomotor, and driving skills, focusing on the neurobiological mechanisms underlying MDMA-induced memory impairment. She has since shifted her focus to the positive effects of drugs, aiming to enhance social abilities and problem-solving skills in daily life through using the unique properties of these drugs to better understand the underlying neurobiological mechanisms. Please welcome Kim.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Ashley, for this introduction, and thank you, MAPS, for giving me the opportunity to speak here today to tell about our research we do in Maastricht in the Netherlands. So I will be talking about the neurobiology underlying these positive effects of MDMA, and before I go and tell you about our research, I will tell you something about the WWW of MDMA. So we will start with what is MDMA, so that we are on the same page. MDMA is the main psychoactive component you want in ecstasy, but it's not ecstasy, because in ecstasy you have additional substances like caffeine, but also toxic substances. So we do research into the effects of MDMA and not ecstasy. This is an interesting picture I would like to show you. See whether I can. Oh, yeah. We started off our research in 2000, 2001, something like that. And we based our studies or our dose on the results on the amount of MDMA that users use. So here you see, in 2003, the average amount in an ecstasy tablet of MDMA in an ecstasy tablet was between 45 and 80 milligrams. So we decided to give 75 milligrams of MDMA to our participants. And now, over the years, you see that the amount has doubled in an ecstasy tablet. So here you see that there are a lot of tablets containing more than 140 milligrams of MDMA. But still, we know that 75 milligrams is enough to induce effect. So we continue our research with 75 milligrams of MDMA. This is also a nice picture. What does it show? Well, the EMCDDA does these surveys every year and asks the population what they take of drugs. And you can see that MDMA is the number 3 drug that is being taken in Europe. And what is interesting is that here you see a map of Europe. You see that in most of the countries, in green, that cocaine is the most used drug by people between 15 and 34. And here you can see the Netherlands. Ecstasy is the most, or MDMA is the most taken drug there. So that's funny. And then we proceed to the last W of MDMA. Why do users take it? I ask my participants why they take it. And I think they all say it's because of the 3 E's. It induces euphoria, it induces empathy and energy. And that are some quotes, what they say. So it induces, or it resembles the feeling of being in love, but then multiplied by 10. Well, that's lovely, right? We know that the acute effects start within 30 minutes after ingestion. We test around 90 minutes because it then peaks. How does it work, MDMA? They say it's chemically messy. What do they mean? It acts on a number of neurotransmitters, mostly on the monoamines, and then specifically serotonin. Here you see the serotonin system. Here are the nuclei of the serotonin system, and it spreads the neurons over the whole cortex. Here you see a synapse. Normally, the neurons release serotonin. They act on these receptors, and you're a normally functioning person with normal mood, normal appetite, because serotonin interferes or it has a role in all these processes. Then you ingest ecstasy, shown here. And what does it do? Normally, I have to mention that, normally if serotonin is released, it binds afterwards to this transporter, serotonin transporter, and then it's taken back up in the presynaptic neuron so that it can be packed again and reused again. What does ecstasy do? And that's so interesting. It binds to this transporter and it makes it work in reverse. So it blocks this transporter. Serotonin cannot be taken up again in the cleft. And since it reverses the mechanism, more serotonin is released. So there is a flood of serotonin in the synapse here. So a lot of serotonin to bind to these receptors, and that's why you experience these good effects. There is also some evidence that MDMA might act as an agonist to these receptors. So, when we started off our research, what was known? On a behavioral level, we had this anecdotal evidence of these positive effects, and we also knew that a specific receptor, 5-HT2A receptor, was induced or was responsible for these perceptual changes and emotional excitation. We also know from preclinical research that the 5-HT1A receptor is involved in the effects of MDMA. If you stimulate that receptor, oxytocin, the cuddling hormone, elevates in the blood. So you have higher amounts of the cuddling hormone. We also know that the transporter has something to do with the effects, because if you block the transporter, you counteract these effects on consciousness and mood. And then the genotype, this is also something interesting. Then when at the start of you, when the egg cell is fertilized, you have your DNA, you have your code that makes who you are going to be. And we know that there is a gene coding for the serotonin receptor, and we also know you can basically put the people in two groups. Let's call them the S group and the L group. And we know that this S group, just healthy participants, are more anxious and experience more negative mood. We also know that these S allele carriers, S group, is at risk for emotional dysfunction after ecstasy. So, we were interested in the role of these mechanisms. I'm going to skip that. How do we investigate these effects? Well, we just asked the population who has experience with ecstasy or MDMA. Why do we do that? Because we don't want drug-naive people, because when we take people that have already taken previous ecstasy, we know that they do not have adverse events or effects. So that's why we use users that have experience. What do we do next? We give them either MDMA on a test day or placebo. We do within subject studies, so every participant receives MDMA on one occasion and placebo on another occasion. And then we test the effects on mood, empathy, and dissociative state. I'm going to tell you how we do that later on. How do we investigate roles of these receptors? We block them with another drug. Then we give MDMA. And when we see a placebo effect, we know that this receptor plays a role. Block the receptor plus MDMA, no MDMA effects, receptor plays a role. And if we see the MDMA effects, we know that this receptor doesn't play a role. So we block the 5-HT2, we block the 5-HT1 receptor, and we also genotyped our subjects for the serotonin transporter. How do we test these mood effects with the profile of mood states? We give them a questionnaire. Here you see a sample of the questions. It are 72 items. And we can compose 10 scales. We have 5 negative effect scales and 5 positive effect scales. What do we see? That MDMA increases a positive mood state. It induces vigor, arousal, friendliness, elation, and positive mood. But it also induces negative effects. It increases anxiety and confusion, and it reduces fatigue. When we blocked the 5-HT1A receptor with pindolol, we didn't block the MDMA effects. So our conclusion was this receptor doesn't play a role in the positive mood effects or negative. When we blocked the 5-HT2 receptor, we blocked the effects, the positive effects. And here you can see it. This is the friendliness scale, this is the elation scale. And here you can see the black one is the placebo condition, so normal functioning. When we give MDMA, it's here, you see a rise in friendliness and elation. And when we block the receptor with ketanserin, the 5-HT2 agent, the effects are reduced. So the conclusion was the effects on positive mood are mediated by the 5-HT2 receptor, the negative effects not, because we were not able to block them. Like I said, we also genotyped our persons, and we pooled our data, because in a normal study we have around 20 participants. That's enough to measure effects on a behavioral level. But when you want to see the effects of a genotype, you need a bigger sample. When pooling our data, I had 56 people. Sometimes we don't have the genotype. We have a bigger sample, but we do not have the genotype of all our participants. And we saw that 45 were in the short group and 12 were in the long group. So here you can see the normal distribution in the general population, and here you see the distribution in our population. So I think it's about the same. So you would conclude that the people that take ecstasy are the same people as regular people. We had, yeah, sorry. We had 38 males and 18 females. And what were the effects? MDMA increased negative effect, it increased positive effect, and the genotype, we didn't find effects of genotype. So there were no differences between groups. I found one effect, so we have 10 scales, and I found one interaction effect of MDMA, genotype, and sex on depression. And here you can see it. These are new data, so I'm still thinking about it. But what you see is here the rating on the depression scale. Here you see a person walking by the camera. Here you see the males. Here you see the females, the SS group, the LLSL. And you can see that the pattern for the males is totally different than the pattern for the females. What you can also see is that the interaction is caused by this. So under the influence of MDMA, L males have a higher depression rating than, I see I have 10 minutes left, so I will start speaking faster. So what this means, I don't know. I think I still need a bigger sample. I also know that I think Harriet DeWitt, she will be presenting after me, she also has the genotype data. And Matthias Lichty from Basel also has genotype data, so I think we should pool our data and see whether there's something more. Oh yeah, this is putting it into perspective. You can actually get a score of 60 on this depression scale, and here you can see the effects. These effects are this. So we were also interested in, you have your DNA, you have your, you are either an S or an L, but the interesting thing is that the environment can also have an effect on the functioning of your transporter. It can change the function of your transporter, the expression. So stress can change the transporter, make it work faster or slower. And we also know that MDMA is a biological stressor. So we were interested to see whether MDMA can change this expression of the transporter. And that is what we did. We defined the expression of the transporter in blood, and this is what we found. MDMA has a significant effect on the expression, but again, no difference between genotypes. But I have to say, we had a very small group, so these are basically preliminary data. You cannot draw actual conclusions, but it's a start. We showed negative correlations between gene expression and positive effects. So the higher the gene expression, the lower the positive effects. And we had a positive correlation between gene expression and negative effects. So the higher the expression, the higher negative effect. Again, what it means, I don't know. We still need to increase the sample size. Now, moving on to prosocial behavior, how did we test that? Oh, 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to hurry. So this was my task. What people see is they do a ball tossing game. They have 4 people on which they can toss a ball. We have a good guy, a bad guy, a neutral guy. The good guy tosses the ball back at the participant a high number of times. The neutral guy just tosses it to our participant and other participants, and the bad guy doesn't toss the ball back at any time. So we thought, this is based on autism research. They show that if they give autistic people an oxytocin spray, that they're able to distinguish between these patterns of players, so they're not going to play with the bad guy. So we thought these effects of MDMA are perhaps due to oxytocin, so we tested that. We gave them MDMA, but also oxytocin nasal spray. And what were the effects? MDMA did not affect prosocial behavior, but oxytocin also did not affect prosocial behavior. We also did an empathy test, basically showing emotional pictures, positive, negative emotions, and then asking what kind of emotion do you see? Cognitive empathy, and then also how much do you feel for this person and how aroused are you by this person. And what did we show? That MDMA enhances emotional empathy, so you're more concerned for the person, but you're also more aroused by the emotion you see. No effects on cognitive empathy, so you're able to, you know what kind of emotion you see, it's not enhanced. MDMA increases the oxytocin levels, but not significantly. We also showed that the oxytocin nasal spray did not affect behavior, but it increased the oxytocin plasma levels. There was no correlation between the effects on behavior and oxytocin. We were not able to block these effects by blocking the 5-HT1 receptor. And we were also not able to block the effects with the 5-HT2 receptor. So the main conclusion was oxytocin perhaps does not play a role in these effects of emotional empathy, and the 2 receptors also do not play a role. We pulled our data with the data of Matthias Lichty, and we had a big sample size, and we showed the same effects. So MDMA enhances emotional empathy, and it also significantly increases oxytocin levels. So here you see, if you have a bigger sample size, you can see easier significant effects. Oh, and I have to tell this, and then I'm going really fast. These are also new data. What did we present it to our subjects? We did a sound task. I presented 60 sounds, 30 positive, 30 negative. And we also asked people, how aroused does these sounds make you feel? And this is very interesting. Here, this is the normal reaction. People were more aroused when they heard negative sounds compared to positive sounds. When we give MDMA, you see that there is no difference. So if they hear negative sounds, they're not that aroused. And this could be good in therapy. we were also able to block these effects when blocking the 5-HT2 receptor. So the 5-HT2 receptor plays a role. I'm going to skip this, but I'm going to explain it to you in the summary. So we saw positive mood effects. Yeah, I know I have to stop, but I'm just summarizing. So MDMA increases positive mood, decreases, but also increases negative effects. The 5-HT2 receptor plays a role in these positive mood effects. We do not know whether genotype plays a role in these effects. We need to increase our sample size. When using emotional stimuli, we see that MDMA enhances emotional empathy, not due to oxytocin response, no prosocial effects, no involvement of the serotonin receptors, and it reduces the arousal for negative and unpleasant sounds. And here, these are the data that I did not show you, but MDMA induces a dissociative state, increases depersonalization and derealization. But we also saw a correlation with heart rate. But when blocking the 5-HT2 receptor, we were able to block this effect on heart rate, but not able to block the effects on the dissociative state. So this dissociative state is not due to the action on a 5-HT receptor. So basically, you can read it because I now really have to stop, but my message is that I think that we have to move to personalized medicine, see what kind of effects influence the response of MDMA, and then see what kind of people would be good responders to the MDMA effects. So I thank you for listening. I thank my collaborators at IMIM, Rafael de la Torre, Maggie Faré. This is where I work, and these are my collaborators, and here is my boss, Jan Ramakers. Thank you for your attention. Sorry.
If you have a question, you can come up and use the mic up here.
Hi, thank you. So I'm always noticing that the neurochemistry discussions always leave out the first and deepest part of my MDMA experience, which is a profound physiological musculature relaxation, which seems to then lead to all kinds of open emotional experiences. I'm not a neurochemist. I'm sure there's a neurological connection there, but it's never part of the conversations.
No, indeed. And thank you for this interesting remark. So actually you say that we should relate this muscle relaxation to the positive emotional effects. And we would be able to do that because you're able to measure.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the armoring just kind of melts away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm still here, so you can. Yeah.
Can you come use the microphone?
He says that the Midhoofers use 125 milligrams. We only use 75. He wants to hear my comment on that. We have shown that 75 milligrams is enough. So 100 also induces positive mood effects. So perhaps you shouldn't dose that high. 75 or 100 milligrams is enough. We have done that, but not in these studies. So I do not know whether it has additional effects on positive mood or empathy. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. I just wanted to add that we've discovered, to our surprise, that 75 milligrams works great. And in our study where we did 30 milligrams, 75 milligrams, and 125 milligrams, the 75 milligram group actually did a little bit better than the 125. But they began lower on the depression scale, so we're not 100% sure. So the way phase 3 is going to work out is we've switched, and everybody is going to get 80 milligrams, actually, the first session, and then they discuss with their therapist, so they want to go up or keep the same for the second and the third session. So sometimes, to our surprise, really, the 75 milligram is enough. Yeah. And I think it's because it keeps people more grounded in their biography, and then when they're remembering their trauma, it's somehow easier to do this memory reconsolidation rather than having more of these body feelings and other things that happen at 125. But some people do really well. A lot of people do really well at 125 too. So that's why we have that option there.
But
Yeah, 1.5 to 2.5 hours. So we give a little bit of flexibility so the therapist could sort of judge, do they want to give it early and maybe make it a bit stronger, or just give it later and keep the plateau? But it's great that you found that about 75 milligrams.
But we also show that the MDMA concentrations are related in a positive way to the emotional empathy. So, and we also know that females have higher MDMA concentrations, so that might also play a role. Perhaps give females less than males. Yeah. we have to find
That
out.
could be, yeah. And that could maybe be related to body weight. I don't know. Probably not. I think it's more related to gender than body weight.
I think so too, yeah.
See?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.